Judge: Mr. Carter, you may proceed with your defense. Ethan, smirking: Thank you, Your Honor. He stands confidently, buttoning his suit jacket. Turning to the witness stand, he eyes the prosecution's key witness, a nervous accountant clutching a file. Ethan: Mr. Hayes, you claim my client manipulated the company's finances. Tell me, how long have you been in your position? Witness clears throat: 5 years. Ethan, raising an eyebrow: 5 years. And in that time, have you ever found any irregularities before? Witness: No, but… Ethan, interrupting: Exactly. So why now? Could it be that you're under pressure to find something that isn't really there? Witness: That's not true. The numbers. Ethan, chuckling: Ah, yes. The numbers. The same numbers that you personally handled. Could it be that the mistake was yours? The witness hesitates, shifting in his seat. The jury watches closely. Ethan, turning to the jury, voice dripping with confidence: Ladies and gentlemen, we are expected to believe that my client, a respected businessman, suddenly decided to commit fraud without any prior record, based on the testimony of a man who just admitted he never noticed a problem before? Does that sound like justice to you? A few jurors exchange uncertain glances. Ethan smirks. Prosecutor, firmly: Objection. Counsel is misleading the jury. Judge: Sustained. Mr. Carter, stick to the facts. Ethan, nodding unfazed: Of course, Your Honor. He steps closer to the witness stand, lowering his voice. Ethan: Mr. Hayes, let me ask you one last thing. Can you say under oath that my client is guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt? The witness hesitates. The silence stretches. Witness, quietly: I can't. A murmur spreads through the courtroom. Ethan smiles. Another victory in the making. Judge: Mr. Carter, you may continue. Ethan adjusts his cuffs, stepping toward the jury with a confident smirk. His voice is smooth, calculated. Ethan: Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a step back. The prosecution wants you to believe that my client, Mr. Randall Hayes, is guilty of fraud. But let's ask ourselves, where is the real evidence? He turns toward the financial expert testifying against his client, an older man with thick glasses, nervously shifting in his seat. Ethan: Mr. Coleman, you claim the missing funds were deliberately moved. Tell me, how many financial reports do you handle each year? Witness, adjusting glasses: Hundreds. Ethan, nodding: Hundreds. And in all those reports, have you ever made a mistake? Witness: Well, small errors happen, but… Ethan, cutting in, voice sharp: Exactly, mistakes happen. So isn't it possible, just possible, that this is simply an accounting error? The witness hesitates. Prosecutor: Objection. Defense is twisting the facts. Judge: Overruled. Proceed, Mr. Carter. Ethan turns back to the jury, his voice lowering, commanding attention. Ethan: Now, let's talk about motive. Mr. Hayes is a man of wealth, a man who has built an empire from nothing. Why would he suddenly risk everything for a few $1 million? Does that make sense to you? A few jurors exchange uncertain glances. Ethan keeps pushing. Ethan: Or maybe, just maybe, someone wants a scapegoat. Someone in his company made a mistake, and instead of owning up to it, they're pointing fingers. And who better to blame than the man at the top? The jury listens intently. The prosecutor shifts uncomfortably. Ethan knows he has them exactly where he wants them. Ethan, walking back to his seat, smirking. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, is often not what it seems. The janitor moves quietly along the edge of the courtroom, his mop gliding over the floor in slow, steady strokes. His wrinkled hands tighten around the handle as he listens, not to the words, but to something deeper. He pauses for a moment, lifting his gaze toward Ethan Carter, who stands tall, twisting facts with his smooth voice. A flicker of something unreadable crosses the janitor's face. His eyes shift toward the judge, then back to Ethan. His grip on the mop tightens, his breath steady, controlled. No one notices him, just another old man cleaning the floors. But beneath the quiet exterior, his mind is working, piecing something together. Every now and then, he stops, just for a second, tilting his head slightly, as if recognizing something or someone. Then, without a word, he continues mopping, blending back into the background. But he is not just watching the trial, he is watching Ethan. The judge sits still, his face unreadable as Ethan parades around the courtroom, twisting facts with practiced ease. His gavel rests untouched, his hands folded neatly before him. Unlike the jury, who shift and whisper at Ethan's arguments, the judge remains motionless, his eyes steady. He watches, not just the trial, but Ethan himself. There is no interruption, no reaction, not even when Ethan bends the truth beyond recognition. No raised eyebrow, no flicker of disapproval, just silence. But behind that silence, something lingers, a knowing look, a quiet tension, as if he's waiting, as if he already knows how this will end. Each time Ethan speaks, his voice filling the courtroom with confidence and charm, a quiet exchange happens just beyond his awareness. The janitor, still mopping in slow, deliberate strokes, lifts his eyes toward the judge. The judge, ever silent, meets his gaze for the briefest moment. No words are spoken, no expressions change, but something passes between them, an understanding, a recognition. Ethan, too caught up in his own performance, never notices. He's too busy impressing the jury, tearing apart witnesses, basking in his own brilliance. But the glances continue, subtle, unspoken, as if the janitor and the judge share a secret, a truth that Ethan, despite all his intelligence, has yet to see. As the courtroom settles, all eyes turn to the judge, expecting a swift ruling in Ethan's favor. But instead of delivering the expected verdict, the judge remains silent, his fingers tapping lightly against the bench. Ethan shifts in his seat, his smug confidence faltering just slightly. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Ethan, clearing his throat. Your Honor, with all due respect, the evidence speaks for itself. Surely a verdict. The judge raises a hand, cutting him off. His expression remains unreadable. Judge, calmly. I will need more time to review the case before making my decision. A murmur spreads through the courtroom. This was highly unusual, especially for a case that had seemed all but won. Ethan forces a smile, masking his unease. More time? What was there to review? He had dominated the trial. He had torn apart the opposition. So why did it feel like he was losing control? As the trial nears its expected conclusion, Ethan leans back in his chair, a satisfied smirk on his face. He has done what he does best, manipulated the facts, outshined the prosecution, and left the jury questioning everything they thought they knew. Victory feels inevitable. Then, without warning, the soft shuffle of worn shoes echoes through the silent courtroom. The janitor steps forward, heads turn, whispers ripple through the crowd. Ethan barely spares him a glance, irritation flickering across his face. Ethan, scoffing. Excuse me, but this is a court of law, not a janitor's closet. Shouldn't you be cleaning something? The janitor doesn't react. He simply stands there, hands steady, eyes locked on the judge. The judge exhales slowly, his unreadable expression finally shifting into something else. Recognition. The tension in the room shifts. Something is about to happen. Something Ethan, for once, didn't see coming. A collective gasp spreads through the courtroom. Murmurs ripple across the benches as the janitor, a man who had been invisible until now, steps forward with quiet confidence. He clears his throat, his voice calm but firm. "Janitor, Your Honor, I would like to speak." The room falls into stunned silence. A janitor asking to address the court? It's absurd, unheard of. Ethan lets out a sharp laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. Ethan, mocking. "Oh, this is rich. Since when do janitors have a say in legal matters? Your Honor, let's not waste any more time with..." But before he can finish, the judge lifts a hand, silencing him. Ethan frowns. Something is off. The judge studies the janitor carefully, then gives a slow nod. "Judge, you may speak." The courtroom erupts in whispers. Ethan's smirk fades. For the first time in his career, he feels something unsettling in his gut. Something he isn't used to. Uncertainty. Ethan throws his head back, laughing loudly, his voice dripping with mockery. Ethan, grinning. "Oh, this is priceless. The janitor wants to give legal advice now. Maybe he'll defend the next case too." The courtroom erupts into laughter, a wave of amusement rolling through the crowd. A few jurors chuckle. Even the bailiff smirks. Ethan shakes his head, still grinning as he turns to the judge. Ethan, smugly. "Your Honor, with all due respect, let's not turn these proceedings into a comedy show. This man scrubs floors, not legal documents." The laughter continues, but the janitor remains unfazed. He doesn't react, doesn't even blink. Instead, he simply looks at the judge. And for the first time, the judge's expression shifts. The amusement in the room begins to fade. Something isn't right. The judge exhales, then leans forward, his voice calm but firm. "Judge, Mr. Carter, I suggest you listen carefully." The laughter dies instantly. Ethan's smirk falters. The janitor finally speaks, and with his next words, he shatters everything Ethan thought he knew. But then, the judge raises a hand. Silence falls. The laughter dies mid-breath, replaced by a heavy, suffocating stillness. The courtroom, once buzzing with amusement, now feels eerily quiet. Ethan frowns, his smirk fading as he glances at the judge. Something about his expression, calm yet commanding, sends an uneasy chill through him. The janitor stands firm, his eyes locked on the judge, as if waiting for permission to continue. The judge inhales deeply, then exhales, his gaze never leaving the janitor. "Judge, steadily. Proceed." A ripple of confusion spreads through the crowd. Ethan shifts in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable. For the first time in his life, he isn't in control. The judge's voice cuts through the silence, firm and unwavering. "Judge, let him speak." A murmur spreads through the courtroom. Ethan scoffs, shaking his head in disbelief. Ethan, incredulous. "You can't be serious. He's a janitor. What could he possibly..." Judge, sharply. "Enough, Mr. Carter." Ethan freezes. The judge has never spoken to him like that before. The air in the courtroom shifts. What once felt like a stage for Ethan's performance now feels like something else entirely. The janitor exhales slowly, stepping forward. His presence, once unnoticeable, now commands attention. He looks directly at Ethan, and then he begins to speak. The janitor exhales, then slowly lifts his hand to his cap. With deliberate slowness, he removes it. A collective gasp ripples through the courtroom. Ethan's smirk vanishes. His confident posture stiffens as he stares at the man before him. Same piercing eyes, same sharp features. The resemblance is undeniable. Whispers spread like wildfire. The jury exchanges stunned glances. The prosecutor leans forward, eyes wide in disbelief. Ethan opens his mouth, but no words come out. The janitor, now bareheaded, meets his gaze, steady, unwavering. Then, he speaks. Janitor, calmly. Hello, Ethan. The air in the courtroom turns heavy. The weight of something long buried is about to surface. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Carter, the arrogant, untouchable lawyer, doesn't know what to say. The room stiffens. All eyes shift between the janitor and Ethan, the tension so thick it feels suffocating. The once dismissed old man now stands with an unshakable presence, his gaze locked onto Ethan's. Ethan swallows hard, his throat suddenly dry. His usual confidence wavers as he studies the janitor's face. The same piercing eyes, the same sharp jawline, a resemblance too strong to ignore. A heavy silence lingers. The jury watches in stunned anticipation. The judge remains still, his expression unreadable. Ethan forces a chuckle, but it comes out weaker than intended. Ethan, uneasy. Is this some kind of joke? The janitor doesn't flinch. Then, in a voice calm but firm, he finally says the words that send a chill down Ethan's spine. Janitor. It's no joke, son. Ethan's breath catches in his throat. The words hit him like a freight train. Ethan, stammering. What? What did you just say? The janitor steps closer, his aged hands trembling slightly, but his voice steady with emotion. Janitor. Do you even remember me, Ethan? His voice wavers, heavy with years of pain. Because I remember you. He swallows hard, eyes searching Ethan's face. My son. A stunned silence grips the courtroom. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Jurors exchange wide-eyed glances. Even the bailiff shifts uncomfortably. Ethan's world tilts. His mind races, scrambling for an explanation. Any explanation, other than the one staring him in the face. His lips part, but no words come out. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter, the arrogant, unstoppable lawyer, has nothing to say. The courtroom falls into a dead silence. No whispers, no murmurs, just an unbearable stillness, as if the very air has been sucked out of the room. Ethan's pulse pounds in his ears. His body feels frozen, yet his mind races. This can't be real. This has to be a mistake. But the janitor, his father, stands firm, his weary eyes locked onto Ethan's. There's no doubt, no hesitation, only truth. The jury watches in stunned disbelief. The judge remains still, his expression unreadable. Ethan swallows hard, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan, no, this isn't possible. But deep down, in a place he's buried for years, he knows the truth has finally caught up with him. Ethan's smug smile vanishes in an instant. His father? His mind struggles to process the words, but the truth stares him in the face. Same eyes, same sharp features. It's undeniable. His breath turns shallow. The once confident lawyer, the master of the courtroom, suddenly feels exposed, vulnerable. Ethan, shaking his head. No, this is some kind of mistake. The janitor, his father, takes a slow step forward, his voice thick with emotion. Janitor, it's no mistake, son. Ethan flinches at the word. Son. A word he hasn't heard in decades. The courtroom remains deathly silent. Everyone watches, waiting. For the first time in his career, Ethan Carter, the man who always had the perfect response, finds himself speechless. The judge, now visibly emotional, slowly removes his glasses, his hands trembling slightly. His gaze lingers on Ethan, a mixture of sadness, regret, and something deeper, something personal. Ethan notices it. His stomach knots. Ethan whispering, "What is going on?" The judge exhales, his usually commanding presence softened by raw emotion. Judge, quietly. Ethan, listen to him. The weight of the moment crashes down. The judge isn't just a bystander. He knows something. Ethan's heartbeat thunders in his ears. His father, standing before him as a janitor. The judge, looking at him like he's been waiting for this moment. Everything he thought he knew, his past, his identity, his carefully built world, feels like it's starting to crumble. The judge exhales deeply, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Judge. He's telling the truth. Mr. Carter. Ethan's chest tightens. His hands grip the edge of the table, knuckles turning white. Ethan, shaking his head. No, this doesn't make sense. But the weight in the judge's eyes says otherwise. The courtroom watches in stunned silence, the once arrogant lawyer now unraveling before them. The janitor, his father, takes another step closer. Janitor, softly. I never stopped looking for you, son. Ethan's world tilts. His carefully built confidence, his arrogance, none of it can shield him from the truth. And for the first time in his life, he feels truly defenseless. Ethan's world shatters. The janitor, his father, was alive all these years. His breath catches. His vision blurs at the edges. The courtroom, the people, the case, none of it matters anymore. Ethan, barely a whisper. You were alive? The janitor nods, his eyes glistening. Janitor, softly. I never left, Ethan. I searched for you, but you were taken from me. Ethan's legs feel weak. His entire life he believed his father was dead, just a ghost from a forgotten past. But now, here he was, standing before him, real and breathing. The judge clears his throat, his voice thick with emotion. Judge, there are things you don't know, Mr. Carter, things that were kept from you. Ethan shakes his head, gripping the table as if it's the only thing keeping him grounded. Ethan, no, this can't be happening. But deep down, in a place he's ignored for years, a memory stirs, a face he barely remembers, a voice calling his name long ago. The truth isn't just knocking at the door, it's breaking it down. Ethan's mind spins, his throat tightens as he stares at the man he never thought he'd see again. Ethan, hoarse whisper. But how? Why? The janitor, his father, exhales, his face heavy with years of pain. Janitor, softly. You were taken from me, Ethan. I tried to find you. I never stopped looking. Ethan's pulse pounds in his ears. His hands tremble. Taken? His childhood was a blur. Pieces missing. Gaps he never questioned. The judge clears his throat, his own voice unsteady. Judge, there's more to your past than you know, Mr. Carter. It's time you learned the truth. Ethan feels the weight of the room pressing down on him. The confident lawyer, always in control, now stands at the edge of a truth he isn't sure he's ready to hear. The janitor takes a deep breath, his eyes filled with years of pain. Janitor, softly. You were just a boy when it happened, Ethan. You don't remember, do you? Ethan's jaw tightens. Flashes of his childhood flicker in his mind. Faint, distant, fragmented. Janitor, your mother. She remarried. A wealthy man. A powerful man. He pauses, his voice thick with emotion. And he wanted me gone. Ethan's breath catches. Janitor, I fought for you. I tried to see you, but every door I knocked on was slammed in my face. Every letter I wrote was never answered. They told you I was dead, didn't they? Ethan swallows hard, his heart pounding. Ethan, hesitant. Yes. The janitor nods slowly, pain flickering across his face. Janitor, I was never dead, son. I was just erased. The courtroom is silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Ethan clenches his fists. His entire life, built on lies. The man he thought was his father, wasn't. The father he thought was dead, never stopped looking for him. His entire world is unraveling. The janitor exhales shakily, his weary eyes never leaving Ethan's. Janitor, softly. And now, fate has brought us back together. Ethan's heart pounds in his chest. Of all the places, of all the moments, here, in a courtroom where he reigned supreme, the truth had found him. His father, the man he had unknowingly mocked, had been right in front of him all along. The irony was brutal. The arrogant lawyer, so quick to belittle others, had humiliated the one man who had spent his entire life searching for him. Ethan's throat tightens. His carefully constructed world, built on power, control, and arrogance, is crumbling beneath him. For the first time in his life, he has no argument to twist, no fact to manipulate. Just the truth, raw, painful, and undeniable. The judge exhales deeply, his expression no longer unreadable. The mask of authority slips just enough to reveal something raw, something deeply personal. He looks at Ethan, then at the janitor. The weight of years, of lost time, of fate's cruel design, hangs heavy in the air. Finally, he straightens, slipping his glasses back on. His voice, though steady, carries a quiet emotion. Judge, the court has heard enough. Ethan tenses. He had always predicted verdicts before they were spoken, always controlled the outcome. But this time, he has no idea what's coming. The judge lets a moment pass, then speaks the words that shake the courtroom to its core. Judge, in light of the evidence and testimony, this case is dismissed. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Ethan's client, the wealthy businessman he had fought so hard to protect, jolts upright in shock. Client, what? You can't… The judge raises a hand, silencing him. His gaze remains locked onto Ethan. Judge, justice is not about power, manipulation, or arrogance. It is about truth. He pauses, then adds, and today, the truth has finally come to light. Ethan swallows hard. He doesn't argue. He doesn't protest. For the first time in his life, he simply listens. Ethan's client, the corrupt businessman, shoots to his feet, his face red with rage. Client, you can't do this. I paid good money for the best lawyer in this city. The judge's gaze hardens. Judge, and yet, justice is not for sale. The businessman glares at Ethan, betrayal burning in his eyes. Client, do something, fix this. But Ethan doesn't move. His hands rest on the table, his mind miles away. The case is lost, his perfect record shattered. The judge raps his gavel. Judge, this court is adjourned. Murmurs sweep through the courtroom. Reporters scribble furiously. The businessman storms out, furious. Ethan, for the first time in his career, doesn't care. He turns, slowly, to face the janitor, his father. And for the first time in years, he looks at him not with arrogance, but with something else. Something he never thought he'd feel. Regret. Ethan sits frozen, his pulse hammering in his ears. The courtroom empties around him, but he barely notices. His hands tremble. His breath feels shallow. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter, the unbeatable, untouchable lawyer, has lost. Not just the case, not just his client. He has lost the foundation of everything he believed in, his reputation, his pride, the very identity he built for himself. His entire life, he controlled every room he walked into. Twisted facts, bent truth, wielded power like a weapon. But now, the truth had destroyed him. He looks up. His father still stands there, watching him with a quiet, painful understanding. And Ethan, for the first time, has no clever words, no sharp retort. Just the weight of everything he never knew, crashing down all at once. As the janitor walks past him, he pauses for just a moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he says, "I never stopped loving you, son." Ethan flinches, as if the words physically hit him. Before he can respond, before he can even fully process it, His father walks away, disappearing through the courtroom doors. Ethan sits there, hollow. His entire world changed in an instant. For the first time in his life, winning doesn't matter. For the first time in his life, he feels truly alone. As the janitor walks past him, he pauses for just a moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he says, "Not all great men wear suits, son." Ethan's breath catches. The words cut deeper than any verdict, any loss he's ever faced. He watches as his father, his real father, walks away, his worn uniform and calloused hands, a stark contrast to everything Ethan once admired. For years, Ethan believed power was measured by wealth, by dominance, by the sharpness of his tongue. But now, as he sits there, stripped of everything he thought made him great, he wonders if he's ever truly been powerful at all.